Hello, I am Stephanie Joy, the attorney at All Things Social Security and Joy Disability Law. Your video is about to start. I just wanted to remind you that if you click the join button below, you can learn more about the memberships offered at a very affordable price that can give you a little more direct attorney answers to your questions. Have a great day and enjoy the video. Hello. So we just got the question, and what is a listing? What are the listings about? In a nutshell, when you're this is all about disability, right? The disability program, and it can be SSI as well. That's supplemental security income, not Social Security disability. It will apply to both. During the sequential evaluation process, and I believe it would be step 3, we have the whole sequential evaluation process playlist if you want to know how the SSA goes down the line and has to nick off every question before it can get to the final determination of whether you are disabled. At step 3, so this is after they've determined that you have a severe medically determinable impairment. The question is, wow, we have these listings. The SSA has developed a bunch of listings of diagnoses that if the medical records details show that you not only are diagnosed with it, but that these certain criteria that would be indicative of a severity that would really render somebody unable to work, just based on those things occurring in the medicals, then you can meet a listing. They have them for all the different body parts. They have them for mental and for physical. There is an adult book on it, and there is a child's listing as well for very, many impairments. So they look to see if you meet a listing. In my opinion, most people do not meet a listing. So if the answer is no, the person doesn't meet a listing, you're not done with the show yet. You still get to prove that despite not meeting a listing, my residual functional capacity to work full-time is not sufficient to find any job that exists in substantial numbers that I can do full-time. And that's when they developed the RFC, residual functional capacity assessment, to determine whether you are limited to sedentary work, light work, medium work, heavy work, very heavy work. Any other limitations? Do you have manipulative limitations? Do you have postural limitations, breathing limitations, environmental limitations, finger limitations, interacting with others? There could be mental issues, could be phobias. There could be panic attacks and severe anxiety disorder, not the garden variety we most have. Most of us probably have it sometime or another. Depressive, severe depression that renders one bedridden, or not bedridden, but it puts in a limitation of maybe not being able to concentrate very strongly, such that maybe you wouldn't be able to be a rocket scientist. Maybe the concentration wouldn't be there, assuming that you would be taught. Could be learning disabilities, that kind of thing. Those things, all of those little limitations areas cut into certain capacities, don't necessarily cut out all of them. So it could be, bad arthritis in your hands might eliminate certain fine dexterity jobs, not all of them. Sometimes, and I go into this in other videos, guys, where I'm like, treat for every impairment, big and small, blah, blah, blah. Because if you say, I can't do my prior work because of my bad back and that, I had to lift 40 pounds when I did my prior job. Okay, they're going to say, well, then maybe you're limited to light work, which is up to 20 pounds. And there's about 20 million jobs. I'm exaggerating, of course, but there is a plethora of jobs that are light. So if that's the only thing you have is that you can't lift more than 20 pounds or can't lift more than 30 or whatever the case may be, that's going to cut out some jobs for you, for sure. Are you going to win? Of course not, because there are a ton of other jobs that don't require that. So you're tasked with proving why you can't do those other jobs. And that's where all those little things that you don't even think about because you never really needed them for your job that you couldn't do because your back went bad. It could be the hand arthritis. It could be you never could see up close. Maybe you have a uncorrectable, meaning your glasses don't correct it, bad acuity, near acuity. Maybe it's convergence. There's so many different things. There can be mental and there can be physical, for sure. Generally, if it's going to be the mental, those little things that are just mildly mental, like distractibility or poor concentration, that's really going to be something for the over 50 crowd that can benefit from that. Not so much the under 50 crowd for other reasons. But the RFC, residual functional capacity branch, when you couldn't take the you're disabled here under a listing, you have to do the long route for the RFC. Prove your RFC would cut out all jobs. It is very, very detailed. It's complicated. It's complex. There are ostensibly 12,000 occupations out there that you have to disprove. So if you don't know what the vocational experts say are part of that job, then how are you going to prove you can't do it? So you either know the 12,000 jobs or you know enough about them to articulate and show through your medical records by pinpoint citing to a limitation that is found in your medical records and found enough to be believed to be kind of like still going on, permanent, still, you've got current records, maybe you got some from the last year, 2, 3. That's how you show that certain tasks would not be possible for 8 hours or for whatever's needed for that job. Maybe it's only needed 3 hours a day for that job. You have to prove you can't do that task for 3 hours. And of course, that's through your medical records. Onus is on you and or your representative to guide you on how to develop that evidence and then get it in so they can use it for their arguments. Okay, so listing versus RFC, residual functional capacity, is what is going to be largely determined at stage 3. If you can prove you have a listing, the game is over, you won at stage 3. If not, you have to get an RFC assessment, which the SSA will do. They do that internally after getting all of your records. That's where they get it from. Maybe they'll send you to a consultative exam. And once they get the RFC, then they go on to ask the question, well, can the person do their prior work? Do they have prior work? Could they do their prior work? If not, are there any other jobs that person can do in the national or regional economy? And you want those answers to be, certainly that last one to be no. Otherwise, well, you have to prove you can't do your prior job to even get to the next step. If you can do your prior job, you're not disabled, obviously. So anyway, it's all about medical evidence, guys. It's not about what you say so much. I mean, what you say can sink your ship, but you can't really float your ship on what you say. It's got to be through the medical records. So when we nag about treat, sound like a bird, a Tweety bird, there's a reason for that. Okay, I got to run. Bye, guys. Hey, so if the subject matter of the video you just listened to is of interest and you want more on it, stay tuned. Here's another one about the same topic, but a little bit different. Bye now. Good morning. Okay, so we're talking about the sequential evaluation process for adults when you have a Social Security disability or SSI claim. Now, you are either perhaps have just watched one of the individual segments on one of the 5 steps, and this will be an overview of what all 5 steps are, just so you know at what place you're in, or you're just coming here for the first time and you are just going to learn right here what the 5 steps are without the details attached to them. So I will try to connect all the other ones to this. So if you need to pop to number 3 and find more details about it, you can, or 4 or 5 or 1 or 2. Okay, so this is just going to be the rundown of the 5 steps and their names and what they are. Super quick. Okay, so when you first file a claim, the first step that the SSA has to determine is, are you working SGA? If you are working SGA, and that's a term of art, there are playlists on this channel about SGA. If you are not disabled. They stop and your case is over. You lose. If you are not performing SGA, the work level of SGA, so this would include people who have stopped working altogether, of course, you get to go to step 2. Step 2 is, do you have a severe medically determinable impairment? One could think of that as a severe diagnosis, perhaps, although I'm sure it's not exactly that, but an MDI would have to be diagnosed, and it has to be diagnosed in the medically acceptable manner. And all of that is through your medical records. So that's where all the medical boom, boom, boom treatment is really important to get to that point. If you do not have a severe medically determinable impairment, even if you have medically determinable impairments, because who doesn't at least have small ones, if you do not have a severe one, just one, you will be denied. Stop, you're out the door, the case is over. If you do have at least one severe MDI, you get to go to step 3. Step 3 looks at your severe MDI and all your other MDIs, severe and non-severe, although it would be a severe one that would have to lend itself to a yes here. Does it meet or equal a listing? They're referring to the Blue Book listings. You can find them at ssa.gov. And if it meets the details within the description of that listing, of that kind of impairment, you will, if yes, be found disabled at step 3. Game over. You're done in terms of you just won the hardest battle of proving that you are medically disabled. Then they would go on to anything non-medical, like, well, did you even have the insurance? Or if it's SSI, are you poor enough? That's at a different office. But the big hard battle that everyone fights sometimes for years on just ended for you if you meet or equal a listing at step 3. Step 4, this is, you go to step 4 if you're not found disabled at step 3. So that's a little switch, right? If you do not meet a listing, you before they go to step 4, they're going to find out what your RFC is. What is your residual functional capacity to work? And that is a whole term of art, and the details are pretty complicated. You go on to step 4 with that RFC assessment in hand, and the question is, can that person, despite those limitations, given his RFC assessment, is there other work? I'm sorry, can he do his past relevant work? Past relevant work is a term of art also. It's got some tests that it has to meet to be considered past relevant work. So you might want to look up that playlist for that. If he can do his prior relevant work, any of those jobs that fall within that category, not disabled. Boom, end of story. Your case loses at step 4. If step 4 finds it, nah, can't do his past relevant work, that is a little too arduous in one way or another, then you get the privilege of going to step 5. Step 5 is there any other work in the national or regional economy that this person can do? Work that exists in substantial numbers. If there is other work you can do of sufficient numbers, certain occupations, you are not disabled, you lose at step 5. That is a very common place to lose, as is step 4. If you cannot do any other work, they can't provide, and that burden is on them at this point, any other jobs you can do in sufficient numbers, then yes, you are disabled and you win at step 5. Okay, more details on 1 through 5, see at the end. I will put up I guess I'll put up a button for number 1. From number 1, you can see buttons for number 2. From 2, you can see a button for number 3. So they will go in sequential. If at the end you click on the button that should be in the upper corner there. Yeah, I think that's the only way I can really do it, but I hope it helps. All right. And if you have any questions, just leave them in comments and we'll talk about it later. All right. Bye.